Hi, welcome to the International Women's Day Findex Roundtable. I'm Belinda O'Rourke and I'm a Head of People and Culture here at Findex. I've been with Findex for over 4 years and I'm delighted to be sharing this panel with some really wonderful, talented leaders, female leaders within our business. So without further ado, I will hand over and introduce who you are meeting with today, and then we'll talk about the topics that we're going to be discussing. I'll start with you.
Hello everybody, so my name's Rachel Walker. I am a mortgage broker and finance advisor with Findex. I guess in context of these sort of conversations, I'm also a mum too, so I'm really excited to see what we have a bit of a chat about today and learn a bit from these lovely ladies who we've got here.
I'm Jess Bell and I'm an advisor here at Findex.
And I'm Sasha J. I'm also an advisor at Findex.
Excellent, thank you ladies. So look, today we're going to be talking about the superannuation gender gap. We're also sharing some strategies about financial advice and tactics for superannuation and retirement. So I too am a mum of 2 boys, so I know firsthand what it's like to be a female in the workplace, but also to have some really strong career ambitions. So what we've got today is a few cue cards to help us with our topics. What I'm going to do is pick a cue card at random and then we will start the conversation and hopefully get a few little gems and insights into these lovely ladies.
Kitty.
First one, superannuation investment strategies. Who wants to kick us off?
Well, I suppose I can kick us off. So in terms of investment strategies, obviously there are quite a number of options for people and how they invest their money. So we look at how you want to be invested in terms of your risk profile. So we have to assess somebody's tolerance to risk and how comfortable they are investing in growth assets. And so from there, once we've determined that, then there's a very broad range of investment solutions. Our main focus is making sure that we're diversified. So diversification is key to an investment philosophy. And we will then from there discuss underlying investments and what that might look like. So you've got passive options, which are more low cost, versus active managements, which is high cost. But you pay for active management if you're sort of wanting to beat the index, for example. But
Would it be fair to say that that's something that should be reviewed throughout the whole life journey as well?
Absolutely.
You know, when you've got a long time to retirement, you might have more of a risk appetite.
Correct.
Different life events, getting closer to retirement, you might want that invested slightly differently.
Absolutely. So whilst you're younger, that focus on growth is important because whilst you're working really hard, you want your money to be working hard for you too. And then when you're approaching retirement, it's also a good opportunity to look at how you're invested and say, all right, now that I've built this wealth, I also want to make sure that I'm adding in an element of preservation as well. So it might be a point at that time that you say, I might pull back my risk appetite because preservation is important, but growth is too. But most of the time we do find that somebody reaching a retirement or retiring will pull back on their risk appetite even just a step down.
And when we think about retirement, so previously people would think kick the can down a little bit of the road and we'd wait until we're a little bit older. So what about for people that take time out of the workforce when we're on a career break or a parental leave cover? Is there a particular strategy that you would recommend early on, or is it just, as you said, keep checking in, making sure that you're diversifying and connecting with the professionals in that moment?
Yeah, that's really important as well, not to sort of let the time out of the workforce be a reason why your super or your retirement assets isn't growing. So, you know, there's strategies that you can consider like super splitting. So if your partner's working still and earning a good wage, you know, they're contributing to their super, but if you're out of the workforce, you're not getting any extra into your super. Obviously, there is going to be change in legislation coming up that actually allows for paid maternity leave to include super contributions, which is great.
Wonderful, yes.
Great for women, you know, so we're lucky, you know, we haven't had kids yet, but perhaps that time when we do take maternity leave, we will also be still receiving super contributions at that point in time. Whereas previously that hasn't been the case.
No, it just stopped.
So you might go, you know, 3 years or 10 years, whatever it might be, depending on how old your kids are, that you haven't had any other contributions into your super, and yet you're paying fees, you might be paying insurance premiums as well. So depending on the rate of return you're earning, it could be eroded by those fees. So super splitting is a good way to also make sure that you, as the primary caretaker not working, still actually can add to superannuation.
And those fees are probably really important. I know a lot of people that just feel like their super isn't getting anywhere. It's the same, and it's because they've got all these insurances coming out, which is probably really important, I'd imagine, then to be doing extra contributions to your super if you're in a position to at least cover what those fees are. So it's growing.
Yeah, it's important to look at the fees you're paying as well as insurance premiums, the structure itself within and outside of super, but also how you're invested. So an example, a couple of years ago, I was talking with a friend and I said, how are you invested with your super? And he had no idea. I said, let's log in and have a look. And he's my age as well, so at that point in time, 28 years old, and he was invested in 60% in the cash option.
Yeah.
And at 28 years old, cash is just not it.
Cash isn't king.
No, so I mean, it's king for some people, but at that age where his focus is growth, and if he hadn't have looked at that until he was 60 years old, the amount of return that he would have missed out on had he not done anything, that's why looking at your investment option is very important.
Yeah, because you just don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
So it's great to tap into the resources and the people that have that expertise that can guide you and lead you in that way. Yeah. Like I know with me, so I had both my daughters quite young. I had my two girls before I was 24, so I didn't really be full-time in the workforce until I was almost 30, and let me tell you how old I am. So it just felt like I had nothing, and it's stressful because everyone has the goal to try to retire as early as they possibly can and try to, increase that wealth. And I've just found it so interesting. I actually just checked my super the other day, sort of in lead up to this conversation, and even just that difference of a couple of $100s of just salary sacrificing, just how much it has grown just because of that compounding. So all these little strategies, it can really prove huge dividends and really change your financial future as well.
Absolutely.
I think that's the beauty of this type of financial literacy. As we start to open conversations that might have been taboo in the past. People wouldn't have spoken about these things readily, and all of a sudden we're having this open dialogue to talk about, well, what are you doing? What should I be doing? How do I set myself up now? I'm far from retirement, but how do I make sure I'm in the best possible seat? So if I go to our next cue card topic, one of the things that we're looking at is tax saving tactics for retirement. So what would that look like if we were thinking about tax saving tactics? Anyone want to kick us off there?
I don't know.
I can start us off. So there's a couple of things that we obviously, when we sit down with a client, it all depends on, I guess, where they're at in life and what their cash flow looks like and what their assets look like, because it might not work for every single person that you can just put it out for. But there's a couple of things that you do before you finish up work, if that means putting more into super and then claiming tax deductions there, and then once you retire, to get that income coming in, to change the structure of the superannuation into something called a pension. Things like that is where, again, it comes to, the average Joe might not know about that, and that's the really importance of, seeing someone that can educate you. A lot of our job is actually just educating clients. So we kind of look at, where they're at and what their financial situation looks like, and then say, all right, there is opportunity to maybe put some more into super if you're not going to use that cash anytime soon. And then when we get into retirement phase, then how do we, make that the best tax efficient vehicle for that person? So again, there's so much that you can do, but it really depends on that individual.
And so thinking about what you've just shared then, often we don't ask the simple question because we don't want to admit that we don't know, or it's a dumb question, but others will be thinking about it. Is there a one commonly asked question that you get from your clients when you're talking about educating them and sharing your knowledge?
Oh, there's so many. Everybody wants to pay less tax.
Yes. And there's obviously not one answer that would simply, go across the board. But is there your one top tip? If you were to distill, what is the one thing that most people want to know, or that would walk away from your conversations with their action? What's the first thing they might do? Might not be one, by the way.
I think it's about enhancing what you're currently doing, but there's always little 1%ers that you can be doing a little bit better. Yeah. And when I say people want to pay less tax, it's funny. They want to pay less tax, but I never hear anybody say I want to pay less interest on my mortgage, for example. And that's another great way of saving money. Like if you actually work out how much interest you're going to pay over a 30-year term mortgage versus you want to save a couple $1,000s on tax, if your aim of the game was to, be debt-free by retirement and pay down that debt as soon as possible, the amount of savings that you can actually accrue from focusing on that rather than the paying less tax thing, it will you'll be well ahead in comparison to that pay less tax mindset. Because if you're making money, you're paying tax. Yes, there are ways that we can minimize that, but you're never going to be paying zero tax if you're wanting to also make money. Yeah. So, but there are vehicles as well that we can utilize so that the tax might not be in your personal name. Yes, it's still being paid, could be paid at a lesser rate. So there's structures, that pay, say, company tax rates, which is 30%, compared to if you're on like the highest marginal tax rate where you're paying upward of 45%. So again, that arbitrage is the difference. And if you're wanting to save tax, there are vehicles that you can utilize in order to do so.
And I guess in terms of then, in my industry, in terms of being in finance and helping people, achieve their goals in buying property or businesses or whatever that it might be, we need to see that you're making money, which means that you do need to pay tax. Yes. So it's also probably, having those conversations and those tax planning with your advisor of this is what I want to achieve. How do we structure this in the best way to achieve these? And then even like you sort of mentioned, those little 1%ers, like even just the little things of paying your home loan weekly instead of monthly, the way that interest is calculated, that can shave years off your home loan, end up saving, hundreds of $1,000s in interest, and just means that you can get to that financial freedom and having that available funds, at a much sort of sooner rate.
That's a really good catchphrase. So the financial freedom, I think that means different things to different people.
Absolutely.
And if we think about, you've just touched on, one of our other topics, which was issues women face in retirement planning. So, the old traditional way of, grow up, buy a family home, pay it off as fast as you can. You've given some tips there. Women planning for retirement, so different categories there. How might we go about that? What are the key issues or the differences you think between men and women when we are approaching that type of planning?
I think sometimes it does even just come down to financial literacy. If you talk about a household that might be a 2-income or 2-person household, there's typically one party that is maybe a little bit more involved in terms of managing the finances and has that higher level of financial literacy. And it's really, I think, important to understand, your partner's financial story, because we all grow up differently in different households. We all have different memory about money and how our parents manage money, and we learn from that, and that's some of the things that we adopt, and it might be good behaviours or it might be horrible behaviours. So I think understanding, as a couple, how you manage your money. I think having that financial independence is really important too. And what I mean by that is knowing that you can do it if you need to. So if the situation arises that you need to step away from that relationship or that ends, that you can land on your own 2 feet, and you've got that strength and that wisdom that I'm going to be okay. I know what I'm doing. I know where my money goes. I know how to budget. I know some of these tools that I can tap into. So then you're not penalised at a later date,
Yeah, I think there's definitely a stigma around who manages the money, and majority of the time we do see it is the male. In my household, it is me. I mean, that's probably the same for most people who work in this sort of profession, but not to say that my husband couldn't pay a bill if he wanted to, but he would have no idea, how, when, what, where.
He hasn't had to.
No, he hasn't had to, but again, if he needed to, he absolutely could, because I do keep him abreast of what we do, what the structure is, how it's being managed. So there is that piece of education. I do hear him even talk to some of his friends about, you should consider this because that's what we're doing. But they're good little tidbits as well to sort of add and make sure that if the time came that you know, somebody did pass away, for example, you don't want to be left being like, I have no idea where anything is or what I'm doing. And we do find that even with men and women at certain points in time where they're like, it's a mess. So simplicity, actually, it goes a long way too. So multiple structures can obviously add their complexities. And as you age, you might want to consider whether that's still appropriate as well. So for those who have self-managed super funds, obviously you're responsible for managing that. And as you age, it might be like if you're not invested in direct property, you might say, do I need to maintain this because it is onerous? I have to keep a lot of paperwork. I have to pay potentially more fees to manage it. And ultimately, if I'm responsible for it and if I drop the ball, there can be serious ramifications. So
yeah. And I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of at Findex is we're really changing that conversation from the gender stereotype of who is the most financially literate. And, you know, we have so many strong female independent leaders and employees here that are learning from others, but it's also not just relying on somebody else. And we've all grown up in different households, we have different experiences, and I think at times there is a gender stereotype that says who is the person who will pay the bills or who will know what that account statement is. And we're really moving away from that. So I think the more that we can continue to share and have conversations that are no longer taboo about financial positions within society, within workplaces, within the family home, that is also different to 10, 20 years ago, we're going to be better for it. And that's, as I said, I'm really proud at Findex. We have such a strong female presence within our senior and all the way through our employee base. And it's really refreshing to see that no one is shying away from sharing their story or making sure that we're engaging and embracing others. So I think that's wonderful.
I think it's a benefit of where we are, but it's not always the case. And I still come across people who really shy away from talking anything about money. Perhaps because of their upbringing, you know, if money wasn't something that was discussed, like your upbringing can have such a big hold on how you approach it too. So if you said to somebody, oh, how much was that? And they say, oh, not much, you know, it's oh, well, you know, but how much was it? Oh yeah, but it wasn't heaps, you know, they just can't tell you the number because that would then mean that you know something about their personal financial position. And people either feel attacked, embarrassed, whatever it might be. But it shouldn't be the case because we learn so much from each other that not talking about it actually means you're putting yourself behind.
Absolutely, and we touched before, or you all talked about, you know, the changes in superannuation, which is coming for parental leave, and which is very beneficial to females who are stepping out of the workplace. We do have a superannuation gender gap though, when we talked a little bit about tactics or strategies that we might put in place. Where are you seeing with your clients, you know, what can we do about that superannuation gap? What can we do to help people feel more confident or help their parents, you know, where it would have been, you know, mums might have been out of the workplace for 10, 15 years and they're now at retirement age, let's say, with less money in there. What are the type of things that we can do now or that we can share with others to help bridge that gap?
I'd say a huge part when I meet with clients and start the initial conversation, it all comes down to kind of a goals-based advice. So you kind of have to go back to basics and say, all right, what is your goal in retirement, or what do you want to do? And it comes back to conversations we've had in relationships where are their goals aligned as a couple? Because that will have a huge impact on, okay, what do we do now to make sure do you want to travel every year? Do you want to buy a fancy new car in retirement? All of those things come into factor when you do, you know, think about retirement. And then coming down to the super gap, you know, there's, you know, we've touched on just a couple of strategies of like spousal contributions and things like that. So, but again, you know, is the goal to live a comfortable retirement together? Then, you know, can we, you know, find a strategy that works with that? I think it comes down to really, you know, what do you want to achieve in retirement? Because there is no blanket rule for everyone. But yeah, so there is a huge gender gap, which is, you know, it's unfortunate, but I think being aware of it first of all, and then what do you actually need in your super to live that kind of retirement, because there's no 1.2 million must have in super if that's not what you're going to need in retirement. So then why put pressure on yourself to reach that? A lot of our conversations initially are about what does retirement, or what does a good retirement look like for you, and then let's work backwards to see, all right, what do we need to do now to get to that?
Goals based, perfect. Yeah.
Some people, there is that nugget of, do I need $1 million in super in order to retire? And
they've heard that somewhere, and that's just stuck with them that's what they need.
And it's so specific. I said, if you only spend 30 grand a year, might be perfect. If you're spending 100 grand a year, probably
different
not.
story.
But I think with the gender gap, and so the wife might have less than the husband, might not necessarily matter if they're happy to aggregate, which normally as a couple you are, and utilize the drawdown from either of your super to meet your combined living expenses. Where the balances are of concern to somebody, there are strategies after retirement that you can look to equalize. So if that was ever an issue, which for some, they like having equal balances, there are things that we can do to make sure that you have a level playing field in retirement.
Okay.
So that's always of consideration. But again, it might be, it's a lot of hassle for X reason, but it can provide benefits. For example, sheltering money in the younger person's name if that meant potentially the older person receiving some Centrelink entitlements. Sure. So there's things like that we can consider, and then your balances aren't equal. But again, that doesn't matter if you as a couple are happy to utilize your combined assets to provide for your retirement.
Yeah, it's all the forward planning, isn't it?
Yeah.
I heard this really good analogy, and it was, not planning for your future is like going to the supermarket without a shopping list. And you just end up with bits and pieces, and you don't go hungry. Exactly, but is that the best thing for you? Possibly not.
It's interesting because you have a lot of conversations, and I've had a couple of clients over the couple months recently that have actually gotten separated, because when they start talking about what their financial goals are or retirement goals are, they realise that it's actually very different.
On the same page,
So I think, again, it's all about talking, whether it's within your relationship, whether it's with an advisor, whether it's within your group, friend groups and things. It's so important to start talking about these things. Even just like my parents, for example, they came from their backgrounds of being very traditional. Dad is the breadwinner, mum's taking care of the kids. And my mum never worked while we were in school, so she was a stay-at-home mum. And now she's actually working. And so just being very, open about, all right, this is what, your super is and what's the importance of that and things like that. Just having that conversation with them to keep them educated as well is so important. So having conversations is so important, whether it's, whoever it's with.
Because wealth means different things to different people. For me, wealth was me having that time with my kids and not being in the workforce, because that's something I'd never get back. So people have all different goals, whether it is the holidays and things like that in the retirement, or whether that's they just want to have money in the bank and that's what makes them feel the most comfortable. So it's really understanding their goals, which you guys have talked about, and then that forward planning of how are we going to get you there and what are some of these things that we can tap into to achieve that.
Beautiful. So we've covered a few topics that were top of mind for a lot of people. Is there any kind of final thoughts or anything that we haven't covered that you think would be beneficial to put on the table in your client experience?
I think just don't be scared.
Yes.
There's fabulous people that you can tap into, and there's so many other resources. You've got podcasts, you've got books. So just lean into it. Yeah,
I think don't be afraid to ask those questions that you might have been scared to, because as you said, somebody might have been thinking that, but you asked it.
Yes.
So it's being bold and brave and proactive with your money, because this is your life and you ultimately want to live it the way you want to. And professionals like us, we can all help you get there by determining what your goals are and giving you a roadmap, letting you be the driver. But ultimately, we want to help you succeed. There's nothing more rewarding than clients being like, oh, I didn't know that I could retire yesterday, but thank you for giving me that peace of mind. Like that
added confidence.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's so rewarding.
I love telling people that it's never too late to start, because people will come to me and say, oh, we should have done this 3 years ago, but you didn't know. And so let's start now. So don't ever feel like it's too late to start investing or changing your super. You can always make your future better if you're aware of that. So don't feel bad for not doing it so many years ago.
Well, thank you so much for all of your tips and advice. I certainly feel really energised, and I've got a few little things that I'm thinking, okay, a few call to actions. So thank you so much for watching. Please go to our Findex website for more information. Remember to subscribe, and you can check out further details and videos on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much.